In about 2 months, Apple's big September 2026 iPhone event will finally arrive, and if the leaks are even half right, this could be the most dramatic iPhone launch in years. We're not just talking about an iPhone 18 refresh. We're talking about a completely new form factor, a foldable iPhone that many insiders believe will be branded as the iPhone Ultra, launching alongside the iPhone 18 lineup. And here's what makes this even more interesting. Recent iOS 27 beta clues are adding fuel to the fire, suggesting Apple is actively preparing the software experience for a foldable iPhone. Nothing is confirmed until Apple steps on stage, but at this point, the rumor pipeline is so packed that we can already sketch a pretty clear picture of what Apple's 2026 to early 2027 iPhone roadmap could look like. So in this video, we're breaking down every major iPhone expected in Apple's 2026 lineup: iPhone Fold or iPhone Ultra, iPhone XR Pro and Pro Max, iPhone XR EE, and the iPhone Air 2 Plus, the most likely release timeline, expected specs, design changes, and yes, the price situation, because memory and storage costs are exploding across the entire tech industry. Let's get into it. First, the big headline: the foldable iPhone. For years, people have been asking the same question. When will Apple make a foldable iPhone? Samsung launched the first Galaxy Fold back in 2019, and ever since, foldables have slowly evolved from fragile experiments into mainstream premium devices. Apple, being Apple, has taken its time possibly to perfect the hinge, the display durability, the software, and the overall experience. Now, the strongest expectation for 2026 is that Apple will finally enter the foldable market with a high-end model, likely called iPhone Fold, but increasingly rumored to be branded as iPhone Ultra. If that name sticks, it would instantly position this device above the Pro tier as the most expensive, most premium iPhone Apple sells. So what will it look like? Most leaks suggest a book-style fold rather than a flip phone clamshell. In other words, think phone that becomes a mini tablet, not compact phone that folds smaller. The leaked dummy-style descriptions point to a shorter and chunkier silhouette compared to the typical tall iPhone slab we've had for years. Display rumors are especially specific. Approximately a 5.5-inch outer display when closed, and around a 7.8-inch inner display when opened, likely with a wider 4:3-ish aspect ratio that feels more like an iPad than a stretched smartphone screen. That matters because it tells us what Apple is aiming for: productivity, reading, multitasking, and media on a larger canvas without forcing you to carry an iPad mini. But the design comes with trade-offs, and one rumored compromise is a major one: Face ID, because foldables are thin. Some leaks claim around 4.5 millimeters. When unfolded, there may not be enough internal space for the full TrueDepth camera system used for Face ID. If that's true, Apple may bring back Touch ID in a side button or power button, similar to iPad Air and iPad mini. For some people, that's a welcome return. For others, it might feel like a step backward on a device that could cost well over $2,000. Now, let's talk about materials and durability, because if Apple enters, it has to avoid the first-gen foldable problems that haunted early competitors. Rumors point to a titanium and aluminum chassis, a liquid metal hinge for added strength, and vapor chamber cooling to manage heat in a thin, foldable body. And when it comes to the display itself, the most likely supplier is Samsung, because Samsung has spent years leading foldable old manufacturing at scale. Also, don't expect a rainbow of colors. Leaks suggest Apple will keep the foldable iPhone Ultra in 2 premium finishes, something like a silver or white option, and an indigo or deep blue tone similar to recent Pro color trends. In other words, luxury, minimal, and very ultra. Now, if the iPhone Ultra is the headline act, the iPhone 18 Pro models are the co-headliners. The iPhone 18 Pro and iPhone 18 Pro Max are expected to keep a familiar overall design, language similar dimensions, and the same premium feel, but with meaningful upgrades where Apple tends to push hardest: display efficiency, chipset performance, and camera tech. One of the biggest rumored improvements is a TDO Plus display technology. If Apple adopts EDTO Plus in the iPhone 18 Pro, That could translate to better power efficiency, smoother adaptive refresh rates, and improved battery life without needing a bigger battery. And in a year where Apple may also be juggling thermal challenges and AI features, display efficiency becomes a big deal. On the performance side, the iPhone 18 Pro is widely rumored to debut Apple's A20 chip. The next step, after the A19 generation, expect the usual Apple pitch: faster performance, better efficiency, and a stronger neural engine for end-device AI. But cameras could be the real story, leaks suggest. Apple may introduce a new aperture lens system on the iPhone 18 Pro, meaning the camera could physically adjust the lens opening to control how much light hits the sensor. That's the kind of hardware feature that can improve low-light performance, increase creative control over depth of field, and help shots look more consistent across different lighting environments. If Apple gets this right, it's not just an incremental camera, it's a more pro camera experience built into the phone. There are also rumors of a smaller dynamic island and a simplified camera control button, possibly removing touch, sensitivity, and haptic feedback. That suggests Apple may be refining the concept rather than doubling down on a complicated input method. And yes, colors. Leaks point to options like light blue, dark cherry, dark gray, and silver, with a possible frosted finish on the rear glass area. If Apple leans into new textures and finishes, it could be a subtle way to make the iPhone 18 Pro feel new, even if the overall silhouette looks familiar. Now, let's move to the models that will matter most for mainstream buyers: iPhone 18 and iPhone 18e. This is where the rumors get spicy, because some reports suggest Apple may be reshaping its baseline lineup in a way we don't typically see. Instead of the base iPhone 18 clearly sitting above a budget-ish model. Leaks suggest Apple could downgrade certain parts of the iPhone 18 to bring it closer to the iPhone 18e, potentially to control costs during a brutal component pricing cycle, and that pricing cycle is real. The entire industry is dealing with skyrocketing demand for RAM and storage due to AI data centers, more servers, more AI training, more hardware competition, and that pushes component prices up for everyone. Apple One key leak tied to that trend. Both iPhone 18 and iPhone 18e could ship with 9 GB of RAM. That's not a typo, and it's also unusual. Typically, you'd expect a clean jump like 8 GB to 10 GB or 12 GB as software demands increase. But 9 GB suggests Apple may be carefully balancing performance needs, especially for iOS 27 and end-device AI, against supply constraints and cost. If true, the benefit is clear: more headroom for AI features, multitasking, and longevity. The downside is that it signals Apple might be fighting margins behind the scenes. Now let's talk about the wildcard: iPhone Air 2. There's debate about whether Apple continues the Air concept or simply returns to A+ model. But the rumor momentum favors the thin iPhone idea continuing into a second generation, meaning iPhone Air 2 could launch as Apple's sleek, lightweight alternative to the heavier Pro models. The expected improvements are exactly what you'd want from a second-gen thin phone: better battery life, a newer chip, potential thermal upgrades like vapor chamber cooling, and maybe the biggest everyday upgrade in additional rear camera. The first Air concept was criticized for missing an ultra-wide camera. And if Apple adds a second rear camera on the iPhone Air, that instantly makes it more versatile for travel, group shots, architecture, and video. Now, here's where the 2026 iPhone story gets even more dramatic: release dates. Multiple reports suggest Apple may split iPhone launches into two major waves. Wave 1 would be the traditional September event, focused on the flashiest, most premium models, the phones that drive headlines and high margins. Wave 2 would arrive in late winter or early spring, aimed at more affordable or mainstream models, potentially improving supply logistics and spreading demand across the year. So the likely release schedule looks like this: September 2026, iPhone 18 Pro, iPhone 18 Pro Max, and the iPhone Ultra iPhone Fold are expected to be announced. However, the Foldable might not go on pre-order at the same time as the Pro models if early production is limited. Translation: Apple could reveal it in September, then ship it later. March 2027, iPhone 18 East is expected to land in the first quarter. of 2027. And the big surprise is that the base iPhone 18 may also launch around that time instead of in September. If that happens, it would be a major break from Apple's usual strategy, where the base model traditionally launches alongside the Pro phones. Also expected in that March 2027 window, iPhone Air 2. If Apple keeps the Air branding and continues the thin phone experiment,